So this whole shift to distributed teams, remote work has just changed the entire way leaders think about employee engagement, employee experience, and that has accelerated our growth significantly over these past couple of years. And that's not going away, right? I mean, people figured out what we can work remotely now. And so, and then from there, you have this whole theme around great resignation, quiet quitting. I know obviously in the economy right now, there's uncertainty, but the fundamental difference is from an employee perspective, I want to know that, what I'm doing makes a difference, right? I'm appreciated. And if I, as a leader, if I'm not able to communicate that, appreciate my people, keep that connection strong, I'm not gonna keep people. And so we don't see that going away. We see that only increasing with changing demographics in the workforce.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is John Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we look at how do you make sure your people feel connected to the work that they're doing, to the mission, to the goals. People feeling connected is something that we should be thinking about a lot more than we do. We think about getting the work done, but we don't think about how people feel when they're actually performing this work. Today we do this special interview with John Duisberg. He is the founder or co-founder of Cooleaf. Cooleaf is an employee engagement platform. It's a SaaS model, but they also really focus on the employee recognition side of it, where he was really describing how they look at the leading indicators of what they really want to reinforce, and what that leads to is the outcomes. Those are really an interesting platform they put together. But today we unpack how they, as a company, have grown so fast by making sure people feel connected. Their mission is really a little bit interesting. When he first told me, I've said these words before in a similar way, and my advisors have said, you can't use love inside of this. So I'm looking at my notes. Their mission is about to help organizations love their people well. And I'm going to be honest, I really appreciate what he's saying there. And I think a lot of people can get behind that and they feel connected to that mission. And that's what it's all about. That's one element of today's interview with John. Some of the other things that we look at are how they truly tell stories about their values, how they make people feel connected in the work that they're doing, how they invest in ownership, how they empower, and the transparency necessary to make sure people feel like owners inside the company. So we've done a lot of episodes about this idea of ownership. So that's mixed in here, but really our focus is how to make sure people feel connected. And today, hopefully you'll take a lot away from today's podcast. My hope for you is that you are creating the kind of company where you are scaling the way you want to. I know a lot of people have big goals for themselves, and maybe the goal is not just about revenue, but it's about how you're impacting the people around you. If you have a really powerful, profound solution to the world, like I feel like we do inside of our leadership development and coaching, you want to make sure you get it out to as many people as possible. And it's not about revenue, it's about truly making an impact. And that's the way I see my job. And if you have any questions about your leadership development strategies, the plan that you put together, when do you actually start investing into developing others, let me know, because I'd love to talk to you about those things. I can share with you insights and some stories, help you create that plan for yourself. And if you want to have that call with me, just go to johnhammett.com and schedule your call today. When you really think about what it takes to lead a company to the next level, it takes you growing as much as growing the others around you. So if we have that call, we'll talk about not only your team, but also you. Just go to johnhammett.com and schedule your call today. Now, here's the interview with John. John, how are you?
Gene, thank you so much for having me today. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, I am really excited to talk about your company and the impact you're making, the mission, and all of the stuff that makes you guys who you are. But before we dive into that, let's talk about Cooleaf. Who are you?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders of Cooleaf, based in Atlanta, Georgia, and we are really focused on helping companies attract and retain the best people by helping them elevate an employee experience strategy, right? Mm-hmm. And what we found, Gene, is that employee expectations have changed and what they want in where they work, right? And so, from a leadership perspective, how I'm communicating my why we exist, the mission, how I reinforce that and keep that connection strong. It's so important for this next generation of talent.
And you guys made the Inc. list. Was this the first year you guys made it?
Second year.
And making it a second time means things are really kind of getting momentum. Where do you think is going to be next for Cooleaf?
Well, so looking back the last couple of years, right? If you were a CEO and you believed that your culture was, your values, your culture was a reason why people were at your company, well, what does that mean to that person that you hired who's never met anybody, right? So this whole shift to distributed teams, remote work has just changed the entire way leaders think about employee engagement, employee experience, and that has accelerated our growth significantly over these past couple of years. And that's not going away, right? I mean, people figured out we can work remotely now. And so, and then from there, you have this whole theme around great resignation, quiet quitting. I know obviously in the economy right now, there's uncertainty, but the fundamental difference is from an employee perspective, I want to know that, what I'm doing makes a difference, right? I'm appreciated. And if as a leader, if I'm not able to communicate that, appreciate my people, keep that connection strong, I'm not gonna keep people. And so we don't see that going away. We see that only increasing with changing demographics in the workforce. And so that's what's going to be continuing to accelerate our growth.
John, I wanted to get an idea of what you guys are doing. And I think there's a lot we could talk about because you probably have insight around employee engagement and retention that we could dive into, but that's not really the focus to talk about your research and how you serve clients. We want to talk about your team, and that'll give us some idea of how you look at things and what you do for people. Because I would imagine you guys are eating your own dog food, as they say. You're using your platforms to increase employee engagement and retention and meaning at work.
That's right. We call it drinking our own champagne.
Sounds better.
Yeah. I've got 2 dogs, so I get it. But yeah, so Gene, so with our platform, one of the kind of fundamental ways that we approach this engagement strategy is through the tactical term is employee recognition. Okay. But the way to think about this is storytelling. Okay. So what you're doing is you're enabling leaders and employees across your organization to share stories about how people are living out your values, how you bring that to life. Right. And so through our platform, when I'm recognizing you for helping me with this customer or helping me, hit this deadline or whatever that might be, that story, there's power in stories. People relate to stories, people remember stories. And so when I'm hiring someone new and they see this, one, there's awareness about what's going on, no matter where we are and, located, right. Or what teams I'm on, but also it's, hey, that's what that value really means in our day-to-day, in our real world. And so being able to reinforce that in a positive way is just really fundamental to the overall employee engagement strategy. And so we do that internally, and that's very, very helpful and effective to keep teams feeling connected and engaged.
I love this. I've been doing a lot of conversations about the importance of living the values, and I'm glad to see that your platform really embraces that. I want to back up for a second, John. How would you frame in the mission of this company?
Yeah. So it's a great question. So our mission is to help organizations love their people well. And I know that sounds a little different, right? But we believe that if you invest in your people, if you love them well as people, they're going to help you be successful as a business, right? You can't be successful as a business if you don't have good people. Right. And so we really, really focus on how we invest, how making sure we take care of our people. And then, we then translate that to helping our customers, the leaders that we're working with, invest and love their people well, so that they're going to be successful as a business. And so that's our mission. And Gene, so just going to kind of take that one step further. Okay. Because I talked to a lot of CEOs, a lot of founders, and, simple question, it's, what's the why behind why your company exists? Or what you asked was the mission, right? And hopefully that leader is going to be able to share that or concisely say, give you a response to that. The next question is when is the last time you communicated that why to your employees? And that's when I get kind of the blank stare a lot of times, or the quiet. And so it's so important in this day and age to connect people to that mission, that why, because I can go get a paycheck anywhere, right? Like the geographic boundaries are no longer. I can work almost, across, from any organization, across this country, different industries and so forth. And so I have to believe that my work is meaningful and matters. And I want to be appreciated. I want to be respected. I want to be recognized for that. And so as a leader, I have to understand that. And I need to be intentional about reinforcing that on a consistent basis.
Now, John just talked about investing in your people, and I agree. I think we should all invest in your people. I've got a training coming up with some of my people this week where I've invested an outside resource to train us on certain aspects that we want to get better at. But what I really want to put a spotlight on today is leadership training. When do you actually invest in leadership training for a manager or a director level? Well, simple. When you feel like their skills are not really aligned with what you need from them, if you feel like you can't empower them fully and you can't trust them to make the decisions and truly lead their team the way you want them to, then you want to make sure you give them the support they need. Now, is it expensive? It can be. I'll be just point blank, but it also is very much worth it. The ROI of taking an employee that is already a high performer and getting them to improve 2 or 3%, just to shift a few things, has a profound effect, not just on them, but the others around them. And you will see it in spades. So invest in your people. It makes sense. Back to John. Let's dive into the details of this, John, because I think that I've talked about these things for a while, but I'm just kind of curious what it looks like inside your organization. What do we see that we might not see in other organizations when it comes to you sharing stories about the mission first and the values of the company as a second piece to that?
So one of the things that we have done that all organizations may not be in a position to do, but if you are a growing company, for example, you might be able to do this, is we actually have all of our employees owners of the company. So we allocate stock options across all of our employees, right? And so we reinforce that and communicate that you are an owner. One of our values is ownership. We want everyone to be a CEO of this company and to feel that sense of ownership and the vision of where we're going, the impact that we're making, right? And so being able to empower leaders and show them that professional trust and respect and that you are an owner has translated into how they treat our customers, right? Hey, we bring on a new employee, how that person gets up to speed and making an impact in our organization. So that's a unique way that we have approached this to really back up the value, the core value we have of ownership.
Now, John's been talking about ownership thinking, and you may not be familiar with my work, but I've been doing a lot of these interviews where people talk about ownership. And so what I did was step back from my research and I organized it into 6 dials. These dials are really important to understanding how people feel about ownership. And the way I usually frame this is if you want to inspire people to think like owners and to be like owners, then you've got to have these 6 dials in check. The first one is mission. Don't need to really explain that. We've been talking about mission today, but it's very true. We've got empowerment. Empowerment is your ability to trust others. A little bit later into the show, John talks about empowering and trusting others. And you also want to have transparency, which John also talks about, is having the ability to talk about the things that need to be talked about, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You also want to have inclusion. It's another dial that's really important for you to make people that feel included really do have a higher sense of ownership. You need to have an element of growth. Right? We talked about investing in your employees, but they want to feel like their skills are growing, their values growing, and that gives them a sense of ownership about the work that they're doing. And then finally, you need to have the dial of mindset, checked. That is really about people accepting ownership. It's not just that you give them ownership; they're accepting and they understand clearly what that means, and they are going to work through the challenges in front of them, no matter what they are. They're not going to make excuses and blame others. That's all. This is mindset stuff. So those 6 dials are really important. Now, I went through them briefly here. I actually, take people through a process where we look at these 6 dials and we talk about it and we debate where your priorities need to be focused so you can continue to scale your company. If you're interested in that, just go to genehammett.com, schedule your call with me, and make sure you put in there somewhere that you want to talk about ownership in the 6 dials. And I'll be happy to walk you through it. Now back to John. I love the fact that you guys give people these options to give them a real financial stake, but I also know it takes more than that. And in fact, I think those other things are even more important because they're the ones that people remember. I know everyone wants financial reward for this and they want to have that feeling of ownership that's very tangible. But what are some of the other things you're doing to make people feel like owners?
So, something I've learned, Gene, is that so as a founder myself, like, there's not enough hours in the day. Okay. So I cannot be a micromanager. I just can't I can't operate that way because I don't have the bandwidth to do it. Just had a baby boy. There's just no way. Right. And so I have to bring on folks to the team that I can empower and trust and as a professional so that they can take that ball and run. Right. And so that has nothing to do with a financial or, anything like that. It's as an employee, I know that I'm empowered to make decisions. I know that I have trust from our leadership, and a mutual respect. And so, we live that out, somewhat as necessity because, hey, we're a small crew and we've got a lot of work we're doing with a lot of customers. And so, but that's, it's really important, I believe, is to really, empower, our employees, leaders, on our team and to have that trust and respect.
When you are in meetings, how is this coming up on a regular basis? Because you said the word live your values, and that really means something to me. It's not something that we just did once and then we put them aside to get to work and build this thing out for customers and, do deals and whatever it may be. But there's things that are happening as sort of rituals inside of meetings. What would you say reinforces what you're talking about today?
So I think that having a level of transparency along with empathy is really important. So, every week, for example, we have a full team meeting, all of our employees, and we talk about where we are as a business. And, Gene, sometimes when you're not hitting your goals, that's not the most fun conversation, right? But I think, when people know that you're being real and authentic about here's where we are as a business, here's what's happening, here's what we're doing, here's our plan, and people have the opportunity to ask real, open, honest questions, it reinforces this sense of, hey, we are all owners here, right? And we're going to figure this out. And so that to me is part of it is this level of transparency, but also just you're bringing your authentic self. Having enough trust and respect where people feel that they can ask honest questions and you can have that dialogue. And so, there's no ego, right? We as a team, we're going to continue to figure this out together. And I feel like that, that translates into, the day-to-day work that everyone's doing, but it also aligns, to our values and our culture as an organization.
I want to turn our focus on you as a leader because we've been talking about sort of the structures and strategies of making people feel connected. I really want to talk about your core principles of leadership. So how would you define that for us?
So, I mean, for me personally, my faith is really important. And so, I look at for me as a leader, so what I've learned is that you have a level of influence, whether you realize it or not. People see what you do. They see how you respond in situations, how you treat a partner, how you treat a customer when things may not be going the way you want them to, right? And so you have this influence. And so you as a leader, as a founder, as a CEO, you can decide how you use that, right? And so for me, like, I'm not trying to push my faith on anybody, but I'm trying to demonstrate how I can genuinely care and love for people. by the way, it doesn't have to, this is not all hugs and kisses, right? Sometimes these are hard conversations and holding people accountable, and that is loving someone well. So, this is not just a fluff kind of thing of what I'm talking about. It's being honest, it's being real, and but having their best interest in mind, right? And how I can continue to build them up to be a leader themselves and be an owner of our company. But that's important to me, is to, it goes back to our mission as an organization to help, help leaders love their people well, because I believe that's going to be how we're successful as a business and how our customers are successful as a business.
Now, John's been talking about accountability, and he said, he really believes it's loving them well. And I 100% agree with this. I wanted to put a spotlight on this because a lot of people think accountability is a little bit more naggy, because you don't want to have to ask people, did they complete the work, and is it the right standards, and is it on time, is it on budget? But I don't see accountability that way. I think it's a part of what we do, is really holding people accountable, and it really is a sign of love. And if you look at that and have that perspective, I think it empowers you to do it more often, and it has the right tone inside of how you engage with people, because it really is about them growing and them taking ownership of their work. Just thought I'd share my 2 cents here to what John's already talked about, and I agree with. Back to John. I always find it fascinating too. We all grow as leaders. We make mistakes. What's a mistake that you have overcome as a leader that you could share with us today?
Yeah. So I think you learn the most from the mistakes. We've made a lot of them. I think that, what I've learned, is that, especially like when you're not in the office together and you're connecting through Zoom and what have you, I may not understand like the decision-making process of why you're doing what you're doing. Okay. And the initial reaction is I can emotionally, respond to that and say, hey, you need to correct that. You need to fix that. Right. Versus taking a breath, taking the time to understand why they're doing what they're doing, and having the trust that they believe what they're doing is the best thing that they can do for that customer, for the company, for the team, and so forth. And so really taking the time to really understand, hey, what are you thinking here? Versus reacting, versus responding emotionally, right? And so, having, again, just going back to that, making sure that if you truly believe you're empowering your people, they have that sense of ownership, that means that they're making the decision that they believe is best. So I need to take the time to understand that, right? And it may be that I don't know the full picture or answer, right? And so, that's something I've learned. And I think that, as we've been in this kind of hybrid, distributed, and remote environment, I just think it's that much more important.
Well, that's a good place for us to wrap today. We've been talking about how people feel connected, through mission, through creating a place of recognition. It just happens to be part of what you guys do as your platform, but it also is what you're living. And I appreciate you telling your story here on the podcast, John.
Thank you so much for having me today, Gene.
Wow, what a great interview. I love talking to founders like this. I know I say this all the time, but it really is true, because they're living their best lives. What I mean by that is they truly are making a difference in the world. They feel like what they're doing is not just about revenue. It's about creating a team and creating alignment, making an impact in the world. And hopefully that's what you're getting from these stories of leaders that come on to the Growth Think Tank podcast. My job is to help, illustrate those stories so that you can learn and grow as a leader. If you want to take it to that next level, we don't have space for that many coaching clients right now, but I'd love to get to know you, and maybe it's something we can do for your team and develop those leaders around you, because that's a core part of our business with leadership development. Just go to genehammett.com and check out the resources we have. And if you want to schedule a call, we'd love to talk to you about what's going on there. As always, when you are thinking about growth and leadership, think of Growth Think Tank and lead with courage. See you next time.